Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenos días a todos los presentes que se encuentran en la conferencia. Como es de costumbre, cada tercer lunes del mes hacemos conferencias tanto de instrumental, bueno, el tercer lunes del mes es de instrumental y los demás lunes son de nutrición o de genética o de instalaciones. Les hacemos el recordatorio, pues que nos sigan en nuestras redes sociales. Cada lunes tenemos conferencias de diferentes temas muy interesantes. Estas conferencias son de entrada totalmente libre para todos y pues es nuestro medio informativo. Y pues como siempre les hacemos el recordatorio que nos sigan en nuestras redes sociales y que nos apoyen difundiendo un poquito las conferencias. El tema de hoy va a ser de Milk Bar. Milk Bar es una marca de Nueva Zelanda que está dedicada principalmente al sector de la crianza. No, bueno, tiene otros giros que van para caprinos y ovinos, pero su principal fuerte sería la crianza en becerras. Ellos cuentan con productos patentados que han sido inventados por ellos, son mamilas, que principalmente la tecnología que tienen es que tienen un flujo de regulación de la leche. Por ende, vamos a ver los beneficios ahorita que nos presente esta Ana, que es la representante de ventas internacionales. Y también vamos a ver los demás productos que manejan. Esta plática va enfocada principalmente a lo que sería el aparato digestivo de la becerra y cómo un producto puede apoyar en su función. También va a presentar un poquito de las enzimas que tiene la salivación, que es uno de los fundamentos principales de Milbark para el aumento de pesos con su tecnología. Hay que tener en cuenta que Milbar no vende plástico como tal, no es una empresa que se dedica a la venta de plástico, se dedica principalmente a la venta de una solución, que es lo que todos estamos buscando. Actualmente el campo se ha vuelto cada vez más difícil. Los recursos para poder trabajar se han hecho cada vez más escasos, tanto del agua, del alimento, cada vez es más escaso y también uno de los temas que es bien importante es que el personal cada vez se vuelve más difícil de contratar. Actualmente sí ha habido muchas rotaciones de personales, por ende los ganaderos tienen que buscar una solución y la solución que nosotros proponemos y estamos muy de acuerdo con Milbar es de tener una crianza conjunta. Con esto puedes liberar espacio y por ende también carga de trabajo. Si estamos hablando de una crianza individual y tú tienes 10 becerras en 10 espacios diferentes, a lo mejor es válido. Los primeros 3 días está bien de calostreo, bueno, estamos hablando de calostreo y un poquito de leche individual, pero ya transformarlo en una crianza conjunta después de esos 3, 4 días, 5 días, ya te estás ahorrando un gran espacio y un gran esfuerzo. Voy a dar un ejemplo muy burdo, nosotros lo aplicamos. Es que, por ejemplo, nosotros tenemos un bebedero para 10 becerros. Por ende, ya no tienes que lavar 10 cubetas, nada más tienes que lavar una. Y con esto ya nos estamos quitando una gran carga laboral, sobre todo. Y bueno, vamos a ver la conferencia. Ana va a hablar un poquito de la crianza en inglés. La conferencia va a ser en inglés, por ende, si tienen algunas dudas, yo voy a estar apoyando en algunas diapositivas. Incluso si es necesario que lo requiera, las puedo traducir cada una para que no se queden con duda. Nada más sería que lo escriban en el chat si es que así lo requieren, ¿de acuerdo? Y al final de esta presentación yo voy a presentar un poquito otra diapositiva que tiene Ana sobre un poquito de los productos y también de los ejemplos de la crianza conjunta. Entonces, vamos a comenzar. Ya son las 10:05. So, please, Anna, could you please share your screen? She's Anna. She's the sales representative of Milbark, and she will present this conference. So, Anna, if you could please present yourself, will be very great.
Great. Thank you, Geordie. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. I apologize that I have no Spanish, and I'm unfortunately from New Zealand. We only speak English, so I apologize for that. If I go too fast, please ask me to slow down. And if you have any questions throughout, just stop me and ask me, because sometimes it's easier to explain while I've got the slide in front of you. So let me share my screen. Let me hope that I do the right thing here. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint here?
Yes, yes, we see it.
Great, perfect. Okay, so what we do at Milk Bar is we don't really focus on just getting milk into a calf. We really focus on how the actual calf's digestive system works, and how we can create a feeding system that works in harmony with the calf's digestive system. So in order for us to do that, we have to then actually have a look at all the processes that take place when a calf is actually drinking. So that is our fundamental point of study that we do. So, of course, with a calf, it all starts with the cow. And calves are born with a natural suckling instinct. And to prevent starvation in the wild, the brain will tell the calf when to go to the cow, when to drink, and how long to drink for. And so a calf that is raised in nature will normally suckle for 8 to 11 minutes and will drink about 15 litres per day. And they drink quite slowly at about 3.5 to 4 minutes per litre. And what this suckling instinct does is it basically starts the whole digestive system. The cow, as you know, if you've ever hand milked a cow, which I'm sure you have, you cannot milk a cow quickly. You have to squeeze the teat and you have to draw the teat down. And the calf is supposed to drink in this action. So she drinks very slowly. The milk delivery is quite slow, and she produces a lot of saliva. So these digestive functions are all activated when the calf is suckling from the teat. So the first thing that happens is a lot of saliva is produced. So this is basically phase 1 of the digestive system. Phase 2 is that this very small amounts of milk that she swallows, they essentially protect the airways from any milk entering into the upper respiratory system, which can then cause later problems. The third thing that happens is the esophageal groove, which is sort of at the juncture of the esophagus and the abomasum, that closes, and that protects the rumen from any milk entering into the rumen and the omasum. Then the slow delivery of milk ends up into the abomasum, and from there the lactose and all the sugars in the milk are immediately absorbed into the bloodstream. Then the pylorus, which is like the gateway between the abomasum, between the forestomach and the hindgut, that slowly releases the curded milk through into the intestines for absorption. And then the final part of it is the brain and the gut. They work together. And so after a period of the slow suckling, the gut sends feedback to the brain and says, okay, we're good now. We've got enough nutrition is coming in. The hormones are all working properly. You can now tell the calf to stop sucking. So these are all the things that happen when the calf is sucking naturally in nature or from a controlled flow teat. At Milk Bar, we are very, very hot about saliva. We are really passionate about it. Saliva does a lot of things and is really overlooked as an essential part of the digestive system. So the first thing that saliva does is it boosts the calf immunity. So saliva is full of two enzyme systems called lactoferrin and lactoperoxidase. So lactoferrin, that's also present in milk, but this is a really important immune response to inflammation. So it increases the immunity of the calf by basically filling the calf with a broad spectrum of antimicrobial effects, which help the calf to deal with any microbial infections. The other part of the system, the lactoperoxidase, that basically destroys the cells of the bacteria. So it causes little changes on the surface of the cell, and it prevents the bacterial cells from multiplying. So these two enzyme systems are really important to help build a more robust calf that's able to deal with the stresses of being raised in an artificial environment. So the calves really, to be able to have access to these really important immunities, they need to be producing this kind of thick, gloopy saliva.
Hello, Anna. Could you please
Yes.
stop back to the last to the and for the other right that let me introduce that. A lo que se refiere Ana es que la saliva es rica en lactoferrin y lactoperoxidasa. Esa enzima es creada por la saliva, que es antioxidante y antimicrobiana, que son propiedades que impulsan el sistema inmune y que también protegen a la becerra. Esto es de vital importancia para las becerras que están en un ambiente artificial. Estamos hablando de que la saliva tiene un pH, esto lo vamos a ver un poquito más adelante, que es un pH alcalino, ¿sí? Y la leche es algo similar. Lo que se refiere un poquito, Ana, es que la leche que consume la becerra y el calostro no puede ir al rumen, ¿sí? Eso pasa mucho en cuando se da un feed intake, una alimentación en cubeta. Entonces, por eso estamos viendo por el cual debemos utilizar una mamila. Estamos viendo que, por ejemplo, en los sistemas de Milk Bar y de cualquier otro sistema que tenga una mamila, pero sobre todo Milk Bar, que tiene un poquito de regulación, impulsa un poquito más lo que sería la salivación de la becerra. Entonces, aquí un poquito vamos a ver que el lactoferrin, pues es uno de los principales proteínas de la saliva y es una parte importante del sistema inmune y una respuesta a la inflamación. Y también incrementa un poquito el sistema inmune, hablando un poquito de su efecto antimicrobiano a base de las infecciones antimicrobianas. Y la lactoperoxidasa, que es se va a decir la LP, también tiene una acción antimicrobiana y es antioxidante, que por lo cual es una parte esencial para el metabolismo microbiano. ¿De acuerdo? Entonces, estamos hablando que entre menos bacterias haya y entre más salivación haya, vamos a tener becerras más sanas, que es lo que principalmente buscamos. Actualmente, lo que estamos viendo un poquito en clínica de bovinos, de cualquier, o sea, de bovinos o de cualquier otra especie, es que es más fácil, así se va a poner este ejemplo, es más fácil prevenir una enfermedad que curarla. ¿De acuerdo? Entonces, nosotros poniendo los productos necesarios para poder prevenir las enfermedades, nos va a salir un costo de producción más barato. Actualmente el sistema, ¿qué es lo que está sucediendo ahorita? Que el precio de los reemplazos, o sea, por ejemplo, vaquillas ya preñadas, es un costo muy alto. Entonces, lo que estamos buscando es tener un buen sistema de reemplazos, un buen sistema de crianza para poder tener un factor económico más alto. Entonces, eso es a lo que un poquito se refiere a eso y en las diapositivas pasadas. Igualmente, les comento, si vamos a tener que extender un poquito más la reunión, la extendemos siempre y cuando quede todos los conceptos aclarados, ¿de acuerdo? Ahorita Mario me pidió pausar un poquito para traducirlo y pues yo con mucho gusto lo hago, ¿sí? Entonces, sigamos. Ok, please go, Ana.
It sounds much better when you say it, Geordie. So saliva also starts the digestive process by allowing the calf to start the digestion of fats. So saliva contains pregastric lipase, and that's the enzyme system that digests the fats. And that actually starts right here at the start when the calf starts suckling. Without the pregastric lipase, the ability of the calf to digest the fats is compromised. And as we all know, fat is a very important part of the calf's energy levels and what they need to be able to grow. So saliva is very alkali with a pH of 8.2. Milk is 6.7, which is almost neutral. But the abomasum is very acidic at about 5.6. So when the calf drinks, the milk and the saliva, they mix and they make a really, really alkali mixture with a pH of about 7.5. And when this alkali mixture hits the very acidic abomasum, it starts to form a creamy curd. From this lovely curding, the lactose is then absorbed up into the bloodstream, and in a properly functioning digestive system, over 90% of the lactose is absorbed from the abomasum before it enters the intestines, and this is also what helps give the calves that real energy boost. So as the abomasum fills, the pylorus, which is here, it directs this lovely creamy curd out from the abomasum and into the small intestines, and then the pancreatic enzymes of lipase and lactase, they start all the rest of the digestive processes. So without the saliva production from this correct suckling, the calf's immunity is compromised, the curding is compromised, and the absorption of sugars and fats can't really operate as well as it should.
Okay, Anna, please stop a little bit. Yes. Ahí voy. Ok, lo que acaba de mencionar Ana es que la saliva, como lo mencioné un poquito anteriormente, tiene un pH neutro y la leche de igual manera. Por ende, el abomazo, como apareció en la diapositiva anterior, tiene un pH ácido, estamos hablando de un 5.6. Entonces, nosotros al tener esos dos tipos de pH en el abomazo, estamos haciendo como una base neutra, ¿de acuerdo? En esta diapositiva dice la saliva de la digestión. Estamos hablando de que si no tenemos la suficiente producción de saliva, no, o sea, todas las enzimas esenciales para bueno, para lo que sería el sistema digestivo no van a funcionar correctamente. Entonces, ¿esto qué es lo que va a causar? Al debido de nosotros no tener un pH correcto en el abomazo, vamos a tener una diarrea. Estamos hablando de una diarrea mecánica. Esto añadiendo, si por ejemplo la temperatura de la leche que está consumiendo la becerra tampoco es la correcta, estamos hablando de que si les damos en una cubeta, supongamos de aluminio en temporada de frío, entonces vamos a bajar un poquito más la temperatura, va a entrar leche al rumen, vamos a tener un pH ácido en el abomazo, vamos a crear una diarrea mecánica y por ende las defensas o el sistema inmune de la becerra va a estar comprometido. Entonces vamos a tener becerras menos saludables, vamos a tener becerras que tengan menos peso y todo esto se puede solucionar con unas buenas prácticas de manejo y sobre todo utilizando las herramientas necesarias para que nosotros podamos tener una explotación correcta. En ese video podemos ver Anna, could you please put the video again?
Yeah.
En ese video estamos viendo la salivación, que es lo que principalmente Milk Bar está ofreciendo. O sea, realmente estamos buscando una salivación correcta, tener pHs correctos. Más adelante vamos a ver una tabla de 3 ejemplos, de uno utilizando las tetinas Milk Bar, otras utilizando una cubeta con mamila y otra utilizando una cubeta sin mamila, para que vean ustedes. Este estudio fue en diferentes países. Entonces vamos a ver los aumentos de peso o los pesos que se tuvieron diarios por nada más utilizar este tipo de productos. Ok, Ana, please go.
Yeah. Okay. So the esophageal groove, so that's the saliva is really what happens at the front end of the calf. The esophageal groove is kind of what happens between the front end and the abomasum. So all newborn ruminants, they have this esophageal groove, and it directs the milk from the esophagus into the abomasum. So when the calf suckles, it triggers the reflex, and that reflex tells the esophageal groove to start to close. This is the correct suckling action. You can see here the calf has got her head a good archway in the neck, and she's really sucking on the teat. It's this action that allows the esophageal groove to start to close. So why it's important for it to close is because we need to protect the rumen and the reticulum and the omasum from milk. Those parts of the ruminant digestive system are for water, forage, grain. They are not for milk, and they don't have any enzymes to be able to digest the milk. So it's very important that these parts of the system don't have any infiltration with milk. So as the calf suckles, these muscles here on either side, they draw together and they make a very small tube so that the milk comes down through the esophagus, through the little groove that these muscles have tightened to make, and then into the abomasum, which is in here. So when we feed a calf quickly or outside of the natural feeding speed, that small tube, it can't close properly. And what happens is you end up with milk entering into the rumen. So there's no enzymes in the rumen to be able to digest that milk, and it basically ferments and produces excess gas, which we would see commonly as bloat.
Ana, could you please
Yes.
back to the last? Thank you. Let me explain.
Yes. Do you
A
want
lo
me
que
to
se
go back to the slide of the actual groove closing?
No, this is perfect.
Okay.
What is, bueno, a lo que se refiere Ana es que hay los músculos de la gotera.
Adam,
Sí, los músculos de la gotera esofágica. Entonces, al momento,
¿qué?
este, Ernesto, ¿puedes apagar tu micrófono, por favor? A lo que se refiere Ana es que hay músculos de la gotera esofágica. Entonces, al nosotros poner una cubeta y a inducir al becerro a que tome, porque pues seamos realistas, todos los becerros, si tú le pegas la vaca, o sea, va a amamantar hasta donde pueda. Por eso nosotros tenemos sistemas de crianza artificial. No estamos, o sea, por eso nosotros le medimos cuánta leche va a tomar. Entonces, a lo que se refiere Ana es que cuando hay un flujo muy rápido de leche, va a causar que esa gotera esofágica no se cierre correctamente, a lo que va a entrar leche al rumen. Cuando la leche entra al rumen, va a haber una fermentación microbiana, la cual va a producir un exceso de gas, el cual pues va a inducir a un timpanismo o va a inducir a problemas de diarreas mecánicos. Por ende, lo que se busca es tener un control de la leche, el cual haya un flujo lento del consumo de la leche para que esa gotera esofágica pueda funcionar correctamente. Okay, Anna, you could continue, please.
Okay, thank you. So when a calf's head is in this position with her head down, the esophageal groove remains open. And that's because when the calf's head is down, the body prepares to receive water, grass, forage, grain, all those types of foods. Those types of foods must go to the rumen to be digested. They cannot go to the abomasum. There is no ability for the abomasum to digest those foods. They're all done in the rumen. So when the calf's head is down, the esophageal groove stays open, that muscular piece stays wide open, and all of those things go into the rumen. That's why feeding milk from buckets should really be avoided, because when you feed milk from this position, it goes directly into the rumen and then it overflows into the abomasum. I apologise for this photo on your Monday morning. Milk in the rumen, it also undergoes a bacterial breakdown, and that produces lactic acid and other volatile fatty acids, and that is what we see normally presenting as acidosis. So that damages the lining of the rumen, and it also, because of the acidosis, it also prevents the milk in the abomasum from curding properly. So this is why it's really important that the rumen is protected from milk, because we end up with all of this. There are some studies going on at the moment in a university which is looking at how this kind of thing from milk in the rumen actually affects the long-term production capabilities of the cow, because we know that this quite acidic rotting material, it actually damages the rumen wall. And we know that when the rumen wall is damaged, then the cow cannot uptake as much energy. So that's a little aside.
Anna, could you please
Do you want to?
put the last
Yes.
PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. Let me explain the last and this one. Lo que se refiere, Ana, es que, por ejemplo, el sistema de la cubeta también se debe evitar por el posicionamiento de la cabeza de la becerra. Cuando tiene una posición hacia abajo, una cubeta, no hay una producción correcta de saliva y más aparte no hay un buen flujo de leche, por ende entra al abomazo, perdón, al rumen. Cuando una becerra toma de esa manera, hay que tener en cuenta que el rumen no es un órgano que está desarrollado. Por ende, cuando entra ahí, produce un ácido láctico y otros ácidos volátiles. Por ende, nos induce a la becerra a un estado de acidosis porque no tiene un órgano totalmente funcional. Por ende, los daños causados en las capas de los rumen, o sea, del rumen, lo que hace es que crea una inflamación y no hace que toda la leche sea absorbada en el abomazo. Entonces, estamos teniendo problemas en la becerra de acidosis y más aparte estamos teniendo problemas en la becerra con poca energía porque realmente toda la leche no se está dirigiendo al abomazo. Estamos hablando de que si es un 15%, supongamos, si de 2 litros, estamos hablando que 300 mililitros de leche no están siendo aprovechados. Por ende, estamos teniendo un desperdicio. Y si le damos 4 litros diarios, pues realmente la becerra está aprovechando 3.4 litros por día. Entonces, ahí estamos teniendo una gran pérdida de 600 mililitros, lo cual, o sea, no nos está dando energía en la becerra y nos va a crear problemas. Y si lo traducimos en el invierno, supongamos, no estamos teniendo la suficiente energía y podemos tener problemas de neumonía, que realmente es uno de los problemas principales cuando no se tiene energía. Por eso es que proteger al rumen de la leche cuando la becerra es chica es una parte esencial. Ahí estamos viendo esa imagen que vemos ahí, es de un rumen que tiene leche. Podemos ver que realmente todo lo que está ahí es, o sea, es un desperdicio. y realmente esa leche no está siendo aprovechada. Es de vital importancia que en la becerra toda la leche vaya al abomazo. Si la leche entra al rumen por una vía rápida de toma, pues lo que va a hacer es que nos va a dar problemas y no vamos a tener las suficientes enzimas para que el rumen pueda digerir esa leche. El rumen, o sea, la leche en el rumen es un factor importantísimo para que la becerra pueda tener una acidosis cuando está pequeña. Entonces, eso es a lo que es traducido en estas dos diapositivas que acabamos de ver. Okay, Anna, you will continue, please.
Okay. So now what we like to look at, so essentially that is how the digestive system works. And what we do at Milk Bar is we think about all of these things and we design every teat is engineered to be able to work with these principles of the digestive system in mind. So now we'll have a look at how different feeding systems will affect the digestive system of the calf. So we'll start with buckets. So feeding calves with buckets really started in the 1940s after the Second World War, when it became necessary for farmers to increase their food production. And so more sort of intensive farming started to occur. Back in the 1940s, there was no technology to be able to feed a calf from a teat because manufacturing rubber teats just hadn't been invented. So the farms used to use a bucket. It's a very old-fashioned traditional method, and it doesn't take into account how the physiology of the calf works. So what we know is that when the calf is drinking her milk with her head down from a bucket, we know that the esophageal groove here stays open, and we know that the milk comes down the esophagus and it comes into the rumen and then it overflows into the abomasum. So because of this, when the calf is drinking from a bucket, the milk is primarily directed into her rumen. So when you feed calves with buckets, 10 to 15% of the milk stays in the rumen and the rest of it has overflowed into the abomasum. The problem with this 10 to 15% of milk that stays in the rumen is that the calf cannot digest it. So your nutrition program that you feed your calves, 10 to 15% of that is wasted because the calf cannot digest it. As we know, the milk ferments, it produces gas and lactic acid. And we also know that the rumen will fall the pH down below 4, which is very acidic, and that's where we get the acidosis. So the first problem for the calf is that the milk goes to the wrong place. The second problem is that they don't produce any saliva whatsoever. So because of that, there is no balancing of the pH. We know that the calf needs a mixture of saliva and milk to be very alkali in order for the milk to then curd in the abomasum. Because it doesn't curd properly, the calf ends up with a lot of lactose ending up in the system. So instead of that lactose being absorbed in the bloodstream in the abomasum, it ends up in the hindgut. And because it's a very rich sugar source, it ends up becoming a nutrient source for bacteria, E. coli, the things that live in the hindgut. And that is what causes the nutritional diarrhea that you see in young calves, is normally lactose in the system. So because they produce no saliva, they also don't get that immune support, and it makes them more vulnerable to sickness, and it also makes them have a longer recovery time. We see it a lot on farms everywhere in the world that use bucket systems, where there might be a sudden change in the climate, there might be a storm come through or something like that, and the calves all get a little bit sick. And it's because they're not being developed to be able to be robust enough to be able to fight off any little things that come through. So because the calf's suckling instinct tells her to suckle and that she has to suckle for an extended period of time, when you feed calves from a bucket, as soon as they've finished gulping their milk, they are extremely hyperactive. And you see this everywhere on every farm where they try to suck the cages, they'll try and suck each other if they can reach each other. So farms will often find a way around this by using a headlock, and they'll lock the calves into place. But that doesn't really solve the problem for the calf. The calf is displaying this behavior because her brain is telling her to keep sucking because she hasn't been drinking for long enough. When people are wanting to group or pair their calves, which is actually becoming law in Europe, if they're using a bucket system, because of the suckling instinct, it becomes a real problem, and calves end up cross-sucking on each other, and it makes pairing calves quite difficult. This cross-suckling, it removes the waxy seal which protects the teat from any infections, and basically this kind of behaviour, cross-sucking and first lactation mastitis, are absolutely hand in hand. So bucket systems, they really place calves under a lot of stress. And certainly you can still raise a good calf on a bucket system, but the management required to do that is really, really high. And we see it quite a lot where there'll be a very good farm management system in place and the calves are fed on buckets, and I mean, they look okay. They're not as good as what we would like, but they look okay. But then the farm manager goes on holiday for a week and all the calves get sick. So it's because of this intense management that the calves can be raised. But actually, if you fed them in a natural way, you don't need the intense management because the calves then look after themselves. I'm going to move on to bottles. Geordie, did you want to translate any of that?
Sí, sí, yes. Lo que se refiere Ana es que el problema de las cubetas o el químico que tiene, o se puede decir el instinto de la becerra, es que al momento de que la becerra no toma leche por un tiempo, lo que hace es que ve la cubeta y se abalanza y empieza a tomar de una manera desorbitada. Por eso cuando ustedes están en el campo y empiezan a servir la leche en la cubeta, ustedes pueden ver que la becerra va y mete todo el hocico e incluso hasta a veces hasta saca leche. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que sucede? Que primero hay leche desperdiciada. Luego, en una de las diapositivas anteriores, es que cuando tú utilizas cubeta, del 10 al 15% de la leche se va al rumen. Entonces, por ende, no está habiendo un buen funcionamiento de la nutrición de la becerra. Aún así, por ejemplo, la becerra va y toma y desorbitadamente y aunque ya esté llena, el cerebro de la becerra pues dice, sigue tomando. Por ende, aunque tú le pongas 4 o 5 litros, supongamos, por toma, se los va a acabar y se los va a tomar todo. Por eso nosotros hacemos un ambiente controlado en el cual la becerra tenga la suficiente leche o energía que necesita para su crecimiento diario y no exceder de de esa cantidad. Menciona algo muy importante que en las cubetas, cuando nosotros damos leche cruda, se podría decir, es que el E. coli, que es uno de los principales, se podría decir, una de las principales enfermedades, bueno, una de las principales bacterias que hay en el campo, porque pues las becerras están en un lugar cerrado, entonces ellas defecan y por ende se mancha todo y hay un problema de coli, siempre hay un problema de coli bastante importante, el cual puede inducir a que tenga una diarrea infecciosa por esta bacteria. Por ende, es lo que no se recomienda tener un sistema de alimentación a base en cubeta. Y Anna, could you please, the next slide, please? Por eso, esto es lo que causa problemas en los pares de grupos, donde las becerras, no sé si lo han visto ustedes que están en el campo, es que las becerras se están mamando, o sea, se están entre ellas mismas. ¿Por qué? Porque esas becerras tienen ese químico en el cerebro, donde aunque hayan comido, o sea, tienen que seguirle, ¿no? Entonces, ese es uno de los principales problemas. Okay, Anna, you could continue, please.
Okay, thank you. So then another popular system is a bottle system. So with the bottle nipples, they are very, very fast flowing. And what they can do is they will deliver the milk into the calf at about 1 minute per litre or 1 minute per quart. There's no way for the calf to regulate the milk flow, and the calf just touches the nipple and the milk flows out at speed. And you can see here, oops, daisies, let me go back. You can see here, this is in Texas. You can see that the bottles have gone in, and we were there with a stopwatch. And so we timed exactly how long it took for the calf. And at 3 minutes, pretty much bang on, the calves had finished. And then they also produced this hyperactivity, trying to suck on each other, sucking on the inside of the hutches, sucking on the cages. And they do that ended up being 6 minutes afterwards. So this is the calf behavior telling us that the milk is going too quickly, because the suckling instinct has not been switched off yet, and so the calves are unsatisfied. So the fast flow of milk with not enough saliva means that the curd doesn't form properly. So this is what we talk about when we say there's not enough saliva and the curd can't form. You end up with this very watery solution with like little lumps of coagulated milk in it. This happens because there's not enough saliva to make the milk and saliva alkali. And because the abomasum is quite acidic, if you don't have a very, very neutral pH going into that acid, it cannot curd properly. And you can really see the lining of the abomasumal wall here is very inflamed. So if you don't feed with saliva, this is what happens inside the abomasum. So because of that, you end up with limiting the weight gains. The calves just can't grow to their full genetic potential. I mean, you see it here, big boned calves, you know, genetically they should be big, but they don't grow as well as they should. The problem also with fast flow bottle feeding is that the milk flow is so quick that the trachea, it ends up overflowing, and you see the calves, they go on, they go back, they cough, and they cough because there's milk entering the upper respiratory system, and it's that constant milk entering the upper respiratory which ends up causing respiratory infections. So the fast flow, of course, creates cross-suckling afterwards. If the calves can reach each other, they will do that. Otherwise, they suck on whatever they can find. Do you want to talk through that, Geordie?
Yes, yes, I will translate. And also we have a doubt we will respond at the final of your perform, that is from Luis Berlanga. Claro que sí, Luis, ahorita vamos a responder tu pregunta. Y bueno, a lo que se refiere Ana es que uno de los problemas que hay con los biberones que no tienen una regulación a la hora de que se le dé el alimento al becerro, causa una hiperactividad. Por ende, ahorita en el ejemplo que vimos, que sí se les dio con biberón, pero aún así las becerras buscan seguir mamando. Por ende, lo que hace Milbar es que nosotros estamos jugando con el químico de la becerra. Un dato que dijo muy interesante esta Ana, que usualmente no se dice en las crianzas, es que el químico ese o el instinto de la becerra dura aproximadamente 6 minutos. Cuando no se tiene un biberón que esté con un flujo regulado, mencionó Ana, que la becerra se puede tomar 1 litro por minuto. Por ende, entonces, si tú le das un biberón de 2 litros, en 2, 3 minutos se lo va a acabar y ese químico en la becerra va a seguir funcionando. Por ende, va a seguir buscando mamar entre las mismas becerras o va a buscar metales o va a buscar en su casetita ya sea de madera o de plástico y eso va a hacer que pueda tener contacto con superficies contaminadas con heces. Por ende, estamos todavía, bueno, si le damos leche que no está pasteurizada, se la estamos dando cruda, puede tener más repercusiones, porque la leche que está cruda puede tener cierto nivel de bacterias, pero todavía a eso le añadimos que esté mamando metales o plástico que esté en base contaminada, todavía vamos a hacer o inducir a la becerra que tenga más bacterias adentro. Por ende, el uso de una mamila con un flujo controlado va a hacer que a los 6, 7 minutos la becerra va a seguir mamando y ya cuando deje de hacerlo, va a tener una satisfacción. Por ende, ya no va a buscar otros lugares en que hacerlo. ¿De acuerdo? Eh, bueno, vamos a continuar. Ahorita vamos a responder tu pregunta, Luis, con mucho gusto. Y ahorita, porque sí vamos un poquito lentos, digo, si nos tenemos que, se podría decir, si nos tenemos que extender, lo vamos a hacer, ¿sí? Sin problema. Ok, Ana, you could continue, please.
Okay, thank you. So what we do at Milk Bar is we engineer teats to control flow. So in a bottle feeding system, we have what we call the revolution nipple. And as you can see here on the front side of it, it has 5 slits which are on a radius, which means that no matter how the bottle is positioned, the calf always has 2.5 slits available for drinking. Then on the back side of it, you can see here this web system. And what this does is it allows the calf to suckle in the same way that she would from a cow. So she squeezes it and she draws down. And what the webs do is they basically control the milk flow so that she cannot gulp quickly, but that she must suckle in a very, very natural way. So with every suckling from the jaw, the web allows the slit to open, and then when she releases her jaw, the web bounces the teat back to closed again so that she regulates her feeding speed. And what this does is it produces a load of saliva. So because they have an extended drinking period and they're suckling in that correct way, they just produce lots and lots of saliva.
Ana,
Because the suckling action is regulated here, it also helps to protect the airways and the esophageal groove. So you can see in this calf, like she's really suckling and drawing down on the teat in a natural way. And that's what helps those front end instincts to take place. After feeding, the calves are very, very content and the weight and performance is hugely improved, normally between 12 and 14%. In a typical farm, some farms even get more like 16 to 18% increases in their daily weight gain. So this is what calves should look like when they've finished. In a little bit of a milk coma, they're just completely blissed out and quiet. That's the other thing. So we also do it in a slightly softer formulation as well for newborn calves. We understand completely that it's very important to get colostrum into the calves as much as possible in a shorter period of time as possible. But we also know it's very important that the calves produce saliva when they are drinking that colostrum. If you're feeding a calf colostrum from a fast flow teat, they get the IgG from the colostrum, but they miss out on the lactoferrin, the lactoperoxidase, so they're only getting half of their immune protection. Whereas when they're drinking colostrum with a controlled flow and they're producing all that saliva, their immunity is much stronger.
Anna, could
Did
you
you want
please
to
stop?
talk to that, John?
Yeah, let me talk about. A lo que se refiere Ana es que Milbar ha patentado y diseñado una tetina que tiene una regulación a la hora de que la becerra tome. Por ende, a la hora que la becerra ya haya terminado su ciclo de alimentación, va a estar contenta y satisfecha. Además de que también han diseñado una tetina especial de entrenamiento, que es de la amarilla, que es la que utilizan a la hora de proporcionarle calostro a la becerra. Lo que se busca, aparte de que tenga un flujo pequeño a la hora de tomar el calostro, es que también salive la becerra y se produzcan las enzimas lactoferrina, lactoperoxidasa y la lipasa pregástica. Por ende, si nosotros proporcionamos el calostro con un biberón que tiene alto flujo, el calostro no va a no va a poder ser absorbido correctamente porque también va a haber una desviación al rumen. Entonces, no va a tener la protección total, por ende también estamos teniendo una pérdida del IgG. Anna, could you please answer the question that have Luis Berlanga, please? Is in the
Sorry, Geordie, what was that?
Yeah. Anna, could you please answer the question that have Luis Berlanga? Is in the chat or I read to you?
Sorry. Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, right. Automatic feeder, blah, blah. Yes. Yes, okay. Hi, Louise. Thank you for your question. With the automatic feeder, the typical teat that the automatic feeder will use looks like this. Let me move that. Is the teat that you're using, does it look like this kind of teat? I'm assuming it does because this is normally what they are fitted with. If this is the case, the difficulty with your calves on the automatic system is that they are drinking too quickly. So it's not so much of a big problem when you're feeding them the higher volumes, but as you start to wean them and you're getting down to 2 litres or something like that, they are drinking that way far too quickly. And so the gut and the brain, that communication fails, and so then they will go and cross-suck on each other. So it's really important in the weaning phase, as you're reducing the milk, that they are feeding at that really controlled flow, and that will help to mitigate that. The other thing that people sometimes see in an automatic group is when they are then fully weaned, the calves will then start sucking on each other. And normally that's because there's not enough energy in their grain or whatever it is that you're feeding. So you might want to discuss that with your nutritionist about improving the fat and the protein content of the post-milk phase feed regime. I hope that makes sense.
¿Qué tal, Luis? Una pregunta. ¿Sí respondió? Ah, ok. Perfecto. Anna, Luis Berlanga said that the nipples that Milk Bar Revolution and Training Nipple look very great, but in your experience, if you have any issues for cleaning.
Mm-hmm. So we use a natural rubber formulation, and we are very, very specific about our rubber. Our design is part of the solution, but actually our rubber is the other part of the solution. And because we use a very high grade, actually FDA approved rubber source, the actual surface of the rubber is it's non-porous. So you can buy other rubber teats, which are a cheaper grade of rubber, and they're a little bit porous, which means that they will absorb the milk fat and the milk protein. Whereas our rubber, it has got a very, very smooth surface. So there's nowhere for the milk protein and the milk fat to basically absorb into the rubber. What we recommend is that you would use a non-chlorinated detergent. Using chlorine is quite popular because it's strong and it's not expensive, but chlorine actually degrades the surface of the rubber, and it starts to create like little cracks in it. And in those cracks, that's where the milk protein and the fats and bacteria can actually lodge. So as long as you use a non-chlorinated detergent, then the rubber itself is very, very robust against infection. And Lewis, I see your question there about the training nipple. You can use that it really will depend on the calf. So sometimes if a calf has had a difficulty in the birthing, or things of, the post-birth protocol has not been as good as what you would like, the calf might be a little weaker, in which case we would recommend leave them on the yellow for 4 days, maybe even a week. Sometimes also if the temperatures are very, very hot and the calves are having some heat stress, then we would recommend that you would leave them on the yellow for a week. So that's actually a really nice system to follow. Basically, newborn calves, they just have the yellow for a week, and then after a week, they would transition onto the black. Some farms try and keep them on the yellow because it's a little bit faster and they want everything to be fast, but actually that ends up causing the nutritional problems that we really, really want to solve. So we really recommend maximum 1 week, but you will know your calves, your herdsman will know your calves, and then they can decide, actually, this calf is 3 days old, we can put it onto the black, or this calf is a bit weak, we're going to give it a couple more days. Did that answer the cleaning question as well, actually, Geordie?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I might just extend that so I can see it better. Right, so then we'll have a look at oops, I'm gonna just move that. fast flow teats. I'm not sure if you have much of this in the Mexican market, but we'll go through it briefly anyway. So this is where you have a very typical fast flow teat where you touch it and the milk bursts out of it. This is very common in Europe, this style of teat. So the calf doesn't suckle the teat, she just pumps it. And when she pumps it, she can drink really quickly, like on the bottle nipples, and she'll drink 1 litre in 1 minute. You can see here that she's just pump, pump, pump with her jaw. She's not actually suckling the teat. Because of this, you get them, we call it breakaway behavior. It's they come onto the teat, they gulp a little bit, and then they come off and cough. We see this also with the bottle nipples as well. So this is basically telling you that the calf is drinking really too quickly and the upper airways are becoming vulnerable to milk exposure. So with the fast flow of milk, it also is too much volume for those small muscles of the esophageal groove. So then we end up with milk in the rumen, and with a lack of saliva, we end up with the curding that's not happening properly. When calves are grouped, or even if they're in single hutches, they cross-suck vigorously. As we know, they're not doing this to be annoying. They're doing this because their brain is telling them you need to keep sucking, otherwise you will die of starvation. So this is a natural response and it's super easy to fix. This is the problem with the cross-suckling. So you can see here that this calf has had 2 quarters, which have been quite heavily suckled on. And so it should look like this with a nice waxy seal, which is protecting the teat canal. But in fact, that waxy seal has been removed and it leaves that teat canal open for any pathogens that might be around. This is why cross-sucking and mastitis are really closely linked. The other problem with this damage that's caused by this is that you end up with a first lactation heifer. She comes into the herd and she only has 3 quarters that are operational. She'll have, we call it a blind quarter in English, and that's caused by the bunting of that developing mammary gland tissue. So while fast flow teats are better than a bucket, they still don't put the calf in a place where she can really grow to her full potential. And we end up with, you know, people say, oh, it's normal for calves to get nutritional diarrhea, 7 to 10 days, it's normal. It's actually not normal. Those types of man-made problems are caused by the feeding systems that we're using. Did you want to go through that, Geordie, or shall I just move on to the milk bar teat?
No sé si tengan preguntas, por favor, si... ok, Ana, wait a minute. No sé si tengan preguntas. Si tienen preguntas, también igual con mucho gusto las vamos a ir respondiendo conforme vaya avanzando la presentación. Y bueno, aquí estamos hablando un poquito de que el tema con el tomado rápido también, o el fast flow, es que puede causar temas respiratorios. ¿Por qué? Porque la becerra tiene que tomar aire o mientras está amamantando, la mamila está tomando aire, por ende, puede inducir que un poquito de leche también se pueda ir a los pulmones si hace esas dos acciones a la vez. Ana, could you please put the video? Aquí podemos ver un poquito que la becerra está tomando la leche y debido a que tiene un tomado rápido y la mamila no está controlada, tiene que tomar aire. Entonces también Milk Bar cuida ese aspecto. Ahorita ya vamos a ver los beneficios de la mamila Milk Bar y ahorita yo les voy a compartir una presentación de los productos que tenemos para la crianza conjunta. Okay, Anna, you could continue, please.
Okay, so Milk Bar, what we do. So Milk Bar actually was founded on my family's dairy farm. And my father, who was an engineer, he had gone back dairy farming. And so he realized quite quickly that the calves were getting sick in ways that they shouldn't. On the farm, we also had beef calves, and they were raised on the cow, and they were never sick. They never got diarrhea. They never had respiratory problems. Their weight was very, very good. So on the farm at the time, the dairy calves were fed whole milk, and so obviously were the beef calves from the cow. So the only difference between the beef calves and the dairy calves was the way that the milk was being delivered to them. So then he started to think, okay, how does a cow feed a calf? The cow, you can't just touch a cow's teat and milk comes everywhere. You have to squeeze it, which stimulates the oxytocin. The oxytocin releases the milk down into the teat canal, and then the calf has to physically suck it out. So it's the same thing with the Milk Bar teat. So we have that little web inside the teat. So if you have a feeder with milk, if you just squeeze the teat, you'll get a small drop of milk like here, and that's all. But if you actually draw the milk down as if you were hand milking a cow, then you would get the flow of milk that the calf needs, basically. She'll drink at nature's speed, which is 3 to 4 minutes per litre. And because of that extended drinking time and the suckling action, she produces loads of saliva. So as we know, with that milk and saliva mixing, it goes down the esophagus. Because the delivery is controlled, the esophageal groove can stay closed. And then that lovely alkali mixture here, it will end up making this lovely thick curd in the abomasum. Because of that lovely thick curding and the lactose is all being absorbed, the saliva, which has the pre-gastric lipase, it starts to digest the fats. Because of that, we see consistently high weight gains. So this is this is the Milk Bar daily weights. This is a fast flow teat, and this is a bucket teat. So these are all done in different markets. These are all research papers that have been published, but we've got so many farm trials as well, which support if you control the flow of milk, the calves will grow to their fullest potential. After feeding, these calves have just finished. This is a 20 teat feeder. This is what calves after feeding should look like. Very relaxed, very quiet. They should just be lying down. Sometimes they might go for a run around, but they are very contented. And that's because of that gut-brain synergy has worked properly and the suckling instinct has been switched off. So what we know is that when you control the flow and you have this lovely saliva production, that this is what happens inside the calf. These images were taken by the Massey University in New Zealand, and they had two 2-week-old calves, 8 of them in total, that were euthanized over a period of time. And this was consistently what they found. The calves that were fed from the Milk Bar teat had this very controlled, lovely curding. The calves that were fed from the fast teat, this is consistently what they found across all 8 calves. So this is did you want to go through that, Geordie?
Yes. Could you please put the table of the game weights, please?
Yeah.
En esta tablita, algo muy importante que vemos y sobre todo lo que nosotros buscamos en la crianza es tener mayores pesos. Aquí en esta tablita se hicieron unos, se puede decir, no experimentos, pero se recabaron algunos datos sobre los diferentes tipos de usos en los cuales se vieron involucrados 7 países, que es Nueva Zelanda, Irlanda, Francia, Estados Unidos, Italia, Netherlands, que sería Países Bajos, y, Hungría, o sea, Hungría, pues, en los cuales se utilizaron diferentes especies, bueno, sobre todo del Bos taurus, y podemos ver cuánta ganancia se tiene utilizando los diferentes tipos, por ejemplo, con Slow Flow Teat, que sería de Milk Bar, a comparación de una tetina convencional y una cubeta. Podemos ver que en Nueva Zelanda tuvieron un aumento del 10,68%, que de eso hablando en una granja de alto nivel o con muchísimos animales puede representar un dato muy importante, y podemos ver que en Irlanda tuvieron una ganancia del 23,8%. Estamos hablando de casi un cuarto de lo que sería más peso en las becerras, hasta ya sea hasta su destete o hasta cuando empiece ya a comer alimento y que ya tenga su rumen bien formado. En Francia tuvieron un 10,26%, en Estados Unidos un 22,9%, en Italia un 11,45% y en Países Bajos un 15,36%. En Hungría también un 7,77%, pero ese 7,77% también es muy bueno. Y solamente utilizando buenas prácticas y utilizando un producto adecuado que lo necesitan las granjas, que sobre todo, como lo mencioné cuando empezamos la presentación, ahorita los recursos cada vez se están encareciendo más, cada vez los costos se están aumentando, por ende todos los productores tenemos que buscar una manera de cómo abaratar los precios y también sobre todo tener un buen beneficio y un producto que dura. Las tetinas Milbar, por ejemplo, lo vamos a ver un poquito más adelante. Las tetinas Milbar se pueden reemplazar, las que son negras, se pueden reemplazar cada 2 meses y medio. Por ende, esa tetina te va a durar muchísimo tiempo. Eso con 2 tomas. Ahorita vamos a ver con 3, 4 tomas cuánto puedes utilizar una tetina hasta reemplazarla. Okay, Anna, you could continue, please.
Just a little note on this trial that was done in the Netherlands. That was actually done with Trail Nutrition, and it was done on a large scale veal production farm. And they found, not only did they find the greater weights on the calves, plus 15%, what they noticed was, let me find it, that they had a viral respiratory disease came through the whole barn. And what they found was that the calves that were treated for respiratory disease, the calves that were fed on the milk bar versus the bucket had a much better growth rate, and also their recovery time was significantly faster. So the treated calves on milk bar were 42% better than the treated calves from the bucket system. And that's what we talk about when we say about boosting the immunity of the calf with the lactoferrin and the lactoperoxidase. That is that exact thing in action. Does that make sense, Geordie?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, this research, this was done in the Massey University. When we talk about the lactose that's remaining in the system, this is what we are meaning. So these calves with this good thick herding, there's very no inflammation around the abomasum wall. There was only 3 milligrams per gram of lactose remaining within the abomasum. It had all been uptaken into the blood system. The calves who have the insufficient curding from the fast feeding, they had 12 milligrams per gram of lactose, but these calves also had lactose the whole way through their hindgut, the large intestines, small intestines, and it's that sugar in the hindgut that causes the nutritional diarrhea. We had, obviously, there was no cross-suckling with the milk bar calves, nice healthy teat canals versus the fast flow calves. And again, about the cross-suckling, I think we've gone over that quite well enough. The weights, 10.68%. These calves, they came from a large farm, which is right next to the university. And in New Zealand, all of our calves are born within a sort of 8-week period. So we have a lot of calves being born on the same day, which makes doing trials like this super easy, because we could take 60 calves, which were only 2 or 3 days difference in age, and they were all housed at the university farm. So same facility, same access to grain, water, etc. The only difference that they had was 30 calves were fed on the milk bar teat and 30 were fed on a fast flow teat. The great thing about improving daily weights is we do know that improving your daily weights improves the first lactation performance. So every gram of pre-weaning weight is associated with 85 to 111 kilos more milk. So that's significant, and it's really important that we think about what we're trying to produce here. Do we want to make a cheap calf, or do we want to produce a future production cow? So basically what we do is we just focus on the digestive system. That's really all we do. So as we know, then the pylore can work properly. If you're seeing this when you're watching your calves drink, you know that you're giving them the best opportunity to fulfill their real potential. Did you want to go through that, Geordie?
Yes, for sure. Could you please put the last slide? Thank you. Bueno, como lo hemos mencionado anteriormente, lo que busca Milbar, además de que tengamos una nutrición correcta, es que hay que tener una pregunta siempre en mente todos los productores. ¿Qué es lo que buscamos? ¿Buscamos tener costos de producción o costos de las becerras baratos, o buscamos tener becerras de alto carácter genético que sean saludables para que sean las próximas productoras? Eso siempre hay que tenerlo muy en cuenta. Milbar, la tetina en sí, nos va a dar buenos resultados y nos va a dar un coste de producción a futuro. Eso hay que tenerlo muy en cuenta, a futuro, porque estamos hablando de una tetina que te va a durar 2 meses y medio. A mí me ha pasado incluso en los establos que se venden otras tetinas comerciales e incluso todavía le abren un poquito más el agujero para que tome más rápido. Entonces, realmente eso no es una práctica correcta, por ende vamos a tener problemas, ¿sí? Entonces, eso es lo que busca principalmente Milbark, y la gráfica que fue la anterior, vimos que la becerra tuvo 3 kilos más. Por ende, estamos hablando de que 3 kilos nos está dando una becerra más pesada y un poder de destete más grande. Okay, Anna, you could continue, please.
Okay. So that is basically the end of how a calf works and what we do to be able to feed the calf in a way to build it. I can just see. Baby calf. About the yeah, in a group. Yes, okay. I have your message here, Claudio. So certainly if you have, I think I know what, do you mean that if you are feeding calves in a group, like in a group feeder, how do you know how much they are getting? I think that's what you mean. The way that the suckling action works is it not only controls the flow of milk into the calf, but it controls how quickly each calf can drink. So if you have a group feeder and you have a very fast flow teat on it, certainly you will have a huge difference of feeding speeds, because the calf is not suckling the teat, she's pumping it. And the one that can pump the fastest will get the most milk. Sometimes it's the small calves, actually, they're really, really fast and they can consume huge quantities of milk very, very quickly. Because of our technology that we have in our teats, each calf has to suckle, and because when the calf releases the mouth, the teat closes again. They can't just hang on to the teat and basically fill themselves with milk. They have to suckle. And so because of that, we get a very even feeding speeds. We wouldn't recommend that you would have a calf of 3 days old feeding in a group with a calf of 15 days old. We would say really maximum of 10-day difference. And then you will know that the calves will all be getting their fair share. We also do a compartment style feeder so people can see how much the calves are getting. And that's really nice for people to kind of feel confident in the system. But once they see it with their own eyes, then they just go to a normal group feeder because it's much easier to clean. I hope that answered, I hope I understood that and I answered that as you needed. So basically our teat range, we do a teat for everything. We have the bottle nipples, if you're using a bottle system. We have the milk bar teat, which is our founding teat. That goes in group feeders or single feeders, whatever you want. Basically, whatever system you have on your farm, we have got a teat solution that will fit that farm, that will fit your farm. So it's just about you deciding, do I want bottles? Do I want groups? Do I want automatic teats? You know, basically we have a solution for every kind of farm scenario. We have an automatic teat, and then these calf buddy teats are for hutch buckets, which might not be so popular in Mexico, but certainly in Europe, these are a very popular method of feeding. Geordie, I'm conscious that I've been taking quite a lot of time. Is everyone okay?
Yes, it's okay, without problem, Anna.
Okay, good. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the yellow training teat. So if you decided that your farm was more suited to a feeder style, like using a milk bar feeder, then what we would recommend is that you would have your calves for the first few days up to a week. We would recommend that you would have a couple of feeders that were fitted with the yellow teat, and that feeder you would use just for training your young calves. You get really nice saliva. This calf, this is its third feed, and to be honest, she's sucking super well, and in my mind, she's ready to move to the black. Then we have our gold standard teat, and this fits all of our buckets. We have a huge variety, like really we are only interested in the teat, but we make a big variety of feeders that will fit any kind of farm. So the teat is for the calf and the feeder is for the farm. So it's up to you to decide what suits you best. How many calves do you feed with Milk Bar system around the world each year? Well, we feed 65% of the calves in New Zealand. That's 5 million calves every year. We put into the market almost 3.5 million teats every year. So some of those teats will be used for multiple calves, but all I can say is millions of calves get fed on Milk Bar every year. In Europe, we're a brand leader in Europe. The US market is a little bit difficult. They're quite traditional in their thinking. But definitely with the Revolution bottle nipple, that is now really going very, very strongly in the US market. We feed calves in the Middle East. A lot of the big, there's huge money that has gone into the calves, into the dairy industry in the Middle East. And the majority of those large farms are on Milk Bar, either with our buckets or with the bottles. Scandinavia in Europe would be almost 75% Milk Bar. It's because in Scandinavia, their calf welfare laws are very, very strict. So they have to be in pairs or groups from day one. And the only way you can do that successfully is with a controlled flow teat. I hope that answered that all right. Then we have, so people say, how do we change the teats? So I always say the best way to change them is to get someone else to do it. But the easiest way really is you just with a pair of pliers pull them out. And that's because we don't use any threads in our teats. You know, anything that you have to screw on, that becomes a problem to clean. So our teats fit very tightly against the feeder to reduce any milk or bacteria buildup. So you can either pull them out, or we do have a little tool which you can basically put around the teat and it just pulls them out. Even when you've got crazy fingernails like this girl, you can still pull out teats. Then we have, if we have farms that are using like this kind of hutch bucket system, which is very, very popular in Europe, these systems have got a 38 mil opening in the bucket. And so we've developed this teat. Because of the opening, we have to have a connector to basically fix it. So normally people use a screw on, but we don't like those for hygiene. So we have this connection system. This is a really nice system. And again, we start with the yellow and then we move to the black. So it's Lewis, for you, we have an automatic teat as well. I'm not sure which machine you have. We work really closely with Holman Lau in Germany and also with Urban in Germany. In fact, for Holman Lau, we made a teat specifically for their machines because they have a deeper connection system. So they did a test on their trial farm and they had, in fact, this is their trial farm here. So the calves, they start for the first 2 weeks in the single hutches. They have the calf buddy teat. And then after 2 weeks, they go into the automatic group and they compared using the Milk Bar system through and their typical system through, which has got the large white teat that you've got, and the weight gain was 12%. Everything else was the same. They were shocked, actually. And then for the bottles, we have the Revolution. So in terms of your farm, it's really just about deciding what system it is that suits your farm. Do you want groups? Do you want to use like a milk taxi and fill fill feeders like that? Do you want to use a bottle system? That's really for you to decide what works for you. What we do is just supply you with the solution to solve a lot of these problems that we see in calf barns all around the world. Geordie, did you want me to briefly show how a few systems work?
Yeah.
I have a really short video of a 5,000 cow farm, which
Yeah.
switch
If
I'll
you
plot
could put
that.
it, will be very great, please.
Okay. So this is a farm. It's actually the largest farm in Europe. It's a 5,000 cow farm in Hungary. And they had gone, the backstory from them was they were using buckets, and they had a team of 6 or 7 people that were working with the calves all the time. They had very high respiratory and nutritional diarrhea problems. Their vet bills were quite extreme, and they wanted to make a change. And so we went there and we set them up with a row of 100 calves, and then we turned that row of 100 single calves into 10 groups of 10. And they tested it, and within 3 weeks they wanted to finish the test, and they just implemented the whole farm because already they could see the huge improvement. And then they've gone from having 6 staff doing the calves to now they have 2 ladies who do them. So they use our Milk Bar 1 Easy Lock. These hooks are fantastic. They hook onto anything and you can flick them upside down. So they start off on these and they are in these hutches for 2 weeks, and then they transition them. So see how these feeders hang upside down, and then she just fills them. So if you have like a milk taxi or something like that, then this kind of system, this kind of feeder works really nicely. Then after a couple of weeks, they take 10 calves of around the same age and they pop them into these igloos with on a Milk Bar 10. The hooks as well allow them to just lock on, so they lock on to these rails so the calves can't push the feeder off. And you can really see how they're all suckling in a very regulated way. And that's how we know that they're all drinking at the right speed and that they're not getting unequal volumes. So this is how the system kind of works in real life. And then they use their milk taxi. Then they also have a water tank, and they just go through and they clean everything on site. The feeder stays with the calves, so there's no confusion about how old the teats are. And it's really simple and easy. So that's kind of the sort of thing that we like to do when we go to farms. We like to set them up in the best way so that they can really streamline the calf rearing cost and the calf rearing time, and at the same time build a much better heifer.
Very good, Anna.
You are
Very good.
very welcome.
It's a very good presentation, and also very complete about the calves. And let me ask if we have some questions. Yes. Si tienen preguntas, favor de escribirlas en el chat. Van a ser contestadas con mucho gusto, incluso si son en español. Yo se la diré en inglés a Ana y yo se las traduciré al español, la respuesta de Ana. Entonces, si tienen preguntas, favor de escribirlas. And one is from Claudio. When you will come to Mexico to visit us?
I would love to come to Mexico. In fact, probably I will be coming because I will come to California in February. So I will add some time on and come to you from them, if that works for you.
Ok. ah,
You're welcome,
Clau-
Carol.
Claudia is my boss.
Ah, okay. Excellent. I
Eh,
mean, I can do a lot of help from here. If I see, if you send me some photos and a video of the calf of a farm, if I can see how the farm is currently set up, then it's really easy for me to be able to recommend this is what we would suggest would work really well for this farm. But of course, I want to come to Mexico anyway, so don't worry, I will.
okay, you're very welcome to visit us, and you're very will be very great if you visit us, right? So, si tenemos preguntas, favor de escribirlas en el chat. En debido caso de que sí tengan preguntas, me podrían dejar su número y los que son distribuidores y representantes de nosotros, pues con mucho gusto me pueden escribir a mí o en el grupo que tenemos, sin ningún problema. También les voy a compartir la presentación para que también tengan acceso a ella. Si en debido caso la requieren, pues me pueden escribir su número y con mucho gusto se las comparto para que ya tengan la información un poquito más a la mano. Y si tienen alguna duda, con mucho gusto la podemos resolver. So I think that we're waiting a little bit for the questions. And Anna, could you please give me a favor? Do a favor for me. Could you please
Mhm.
stop the screen?
Yeah.
I will share a presentation. Let me. Okay. Uh, uh, uh. ¿Sí ven la presentación? Lo que faltó ahorita, bueno, para complementar un poquito lo que dijo Ana de Milbar, también Milbar tiene un sistema de alimentación conjunta o crianza conjunta. Es algo que nosotros actualmente estamos promoviendo mucho, ya que como lo dije al inicio voy a poner mi cámara, ya que como mencioné al inicio, actualmente todos los espacios se están viendo reducidos, el personal está escaseando en las granjas, cada vez se está volviendo un poquito más difícil el sector primario, pero pues tenemos que buscar y encontrar la solución adecuada. Por ende, Milbar promueve mucho la crianza conjunta, que es algo muy interesante. Nosotros ya lo aplicamos en la granja, nosotros ya lo estamos haciendo y nos está ofreciendo buenos resultados. Nosotros utilizamos Milbar, si no me equivoco, hace un poquito más de un año. Por ende, ya lo hemos comprobado y hemos decidido que es algo que realmente sí funciona. Los beneficios de Milbar es que es un plástico, que es un poliuretano que es de grado alimenticio y más aparte tiene una protección contra UV. Por ende, es un material que te va a estar durando muchísimo tiempo. Como mencionamos, las mamilas también te van a durar más de 2 meses, 2 meses y medio. Y no es un material que vas a tener que estar comprando constantemente. Simplemente vas a tener que estar comprando las mamilas. Aquí podemos ver que, bueno, lo primero, uno de los grandes detalles es que es un material muy ligero. Realmente no es un material pesado, no es un material que sea difícil de manejar, es un material que es también muy fácil de limpiar, por ende es práctico. Aquí podemos ver los diferentes productos que tienen para crianza conjunta, que, bueno, algunos de ellos, aquí, bueno, voy a ver si está un poquito más adelante, tenemos para diferentes grupos. Por ejemplo, tenemos desde 5 animales, desde 4 animales, incluso hasta tenemos barras para alimentar a 13 becerras a la vez. Por ende, ya te estás quitando mucho el tema de si no tienes personal, pues una sola persona puede alimentar a 13 becerras, que es un tema bastante importante y muy interesante. Aquí podemos ver un poquito que también tiene una tecnología, se podría decir, de compartimientos en el plástico. Cada compartimiento que vemos ahí, este es un modelo diferente. Cada uno puede abarcar hasta 2,5 litros. Por ende, también puedes tener una alimentación controlada por parte del establo hacia el personal y del personal hacia la becerra. ¿de acuerdo? Entonces, cada compartimiento tiene 2.5 litros, por ende, si tú le das 5 litros al que va a ir a crianza, pues los tiene que completar, y esos dos compartimientos son totalmente igualitarios, por ende, las dos becerras van a estar tomando 2.5 litros. Y ahí podemos ver las barras. Tenemos desde 13 animales hasta 18, que por ende ya sería se podría decir, un factor más importante, poder alimentar a 18 becerras a la vez. Y eso sería un poquito de la crianza conjunta. Y este modelo todavía no lo tenemos en México. En México tenemos hasta 13 animales y este ya también lo podríamos traer si alguien lo solicita con mucho gusto. Este es para 20 becerras a la vez. Entonces, eso sería por parte de la crianza conjunta. Y como les mencioné, si tienen dudas, con mucho gusto se las compartimos. Bueno, Alberto, claro que sí, vamos a mandarte la información y con mucho gusto vas a tener las diapositivas a la mano. Y pues sí, en resumen, lo que dice Claudio, mejoramos la eficiencia alimenticia, la ganancia de peso, tenemos más salud para las becerras y tenemos menos carga de trabajo, que también es un factor muy, muy importante que estamos buscando todos actualmente que nos dedicamos al sector primario, poder tener menos trabajo debido un poco a la falta de personal que está faltando. ¿De acuerdo? Entonces, eso sería por parte de Milbar y por parte de Lactogen. Espero que les haya gustado mucho esta presentación y pues síganos en nuestras redes sociales para que estén informados de las próximas conferencias. Nosotros hacemos conferencia cada lunes y pues traemos a diferentes ponentes que son pláticas totalmente gratuitas, informativas, para que ustedes puedan tener las herramientas para desempeñar mejor su trabajo y que sepan la tecnología que nosotros traemos desde otras partes del mundo. Entonces, ya sería, si por el momento no hay más preguntas, y claro que sí, Luis, te vamos a mandar la presentación. Te voy a mandar dos presentaciones, permíteme, una que es esta que la expuso Ana y otro sobre los sistemas que hay. Con mucho gusto tenemos las dos presentaciones. Una nos expuso porque es así, supera las 100 diapositivas y realmente sí es muy largo. Entonces, sí, para poder abarcarlo un poquito, o sea, para poder reducirlo a la hora que tenemos, y a veces está un poquito complicado. Entonces, si no tenemos más preguntas, yo creo que ya vamos a dar por finalizada la, la conferencia. Igualmente, esta plática se sube a YouTube, por ende, si también tienen preguntas en el YouTube, con mucho gusto nosotros las respondemos por esa vía. Y ya para finalizar, pues muchas gracias, Ana. Thank you very much for the presentation, for
You're
the
very, very welcome.
conference. Well, you have a very, very good information for sector. Actually, in Mexico, we need to upgrade our system. We use your system in our farm, and we have a very, very good results.
Mhm.
And thank you for the conference.
You're very welcome, Geordie. And if anyone has any questions afterwards that they think of, just send me a WhatsApp or an email, and I am here to help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to finish the conference, and also Ana say that si tenemos dudas o preguntas, están libres. Ella puso su correo, también con mucho gusto ella tiene su vía de información, y si no, con nosotros. Nosotros somos los distribuidores de Milk Bar en México, y pues realmente Ana es de mucho apoyo para nosotros. So thank you very much, Ana. We will going to finish the conference
Great.
because it's Monday and too many people have to work.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, guys.
So,
Radio. Have a great day. See you.
have
Bye.
a very great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Vamos a finalizar la conferencia. Muchas gracias a todos los participantes que estuvieron. Y pues ya saben, tienen mi número, tienen nuestro apoyo de parte de Lactogem y cualquier duda que tengan son totalmente libres de mandarme un WhatsApp o un correo. Aquí estamos para apoyarlos a todos, ¿sí? Pues muchas gracias a todos los participantes. Ya vamos a finalizar la conferencia y pues nuevamente gracias por participar.